Hello. Is this James Hartville?
Yes. Who am I speaking?
This is Stephen Reimers calling. You may have heard my name in connection with David Soldier a couple times.
Doesn't ring a bell off the top of my head. Sorry.
Well, you and I have never had direct contact. I've heard your name many times, and a couple things. I've worked with David, known him for a long time. I'm trying to sort some stuff out, and I watched the interview that you and Brian Davis had, where you talked about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Brian actually talked about me in that interview. Conflicting stories. You guys picked David up from his mom's house and took him somewhere. What was the background behind that? Why did that happen?
His request and his mother, the story that we were told was that his mother was undergoing chemotherapy, or about to, and he needed a place to stay. So we offered to house him temporarily until his mother was done with her treatment.
Okay. Who's this mysterious person called Elijah?
I don't know.
Okay. Then once you when David got back from wherever he went, he was arrested in Oregon City, and the police called him Elijah. Any idea why they would have done that?
My guess, I wasn't there, but I can only assume. The moment that we figured out that his stories were fabrications and he was blowing many things out of proportion, he essentially just became an untrustworthy individual, and everything that he said became suspect. And so we treated everything. He was still with us at the time, not me personally, but with extended family up in that area. Before dropping him off at the bus station, he stayed a few more days.
Dropping him off at the bus station? Which bus station?
A bus station in Washington, in Des Moines, Washington.
Okay.
To send him back home to Oregon City. The time that he was up there before the drop-off, everyone was defensive and unsuspect for him. They knew not to trust him. They were wary of everything he had to say. So some individuals took it upon themselves to try to investigate and figure out who he was. Now, nobody there's a professional. There was no private investigation or anything. So it was all just personal speculation and guesswork is all it was. So alleged just happened to be a case of someone who matched his age, physical appearance, and other attributes, a real missing person's case. And so it was, they were trying to make connections. Now, I can't verify if any of that was true. Obviously, the police let him go. But that's the origin of that story. Is just simply an attempt to try to unravel his true identity.
Speaking of true identities, what do you know about this other mysterious person called Cody?
Same thing. It's just another attempt to try to connect the dots with real missing persons cases, fitting descriptions, timeline of events with his mother and people who presumably know his mother and their history. Again, none of this is professional. None of this was done via the law enforcement or anything. It's just a bunch of people trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Do you know a person called Quinn Rose?
Yes, I know him.
Say again?
Yes, I know him.
Okay. Yeah, apparently David had a history with Quinn Rose. that wasn't too friendly?
Well, Quinn's a nice guy. He's a family man. He housed David after I housed David initially. Then he was taken to Washington, so he was under Quinn's care for a week or two until Quinn was the one who dropped him off at the bus station. No, but Quinn is not a dangerous man at all. He was trying to help.
And what bus station would Quinn have dropped him off at?
I don't live in the area, so I can't give you a name of a specific bus station. And again, I wasn't there during the duration of that time. I was here in Oregon working.
Yeah. And that whole trip was, I've been working with David for some time. I've been trying to figure out what really happened. Any idea why he was taken to Washington?
Yeah, we were scared. My wife and I at the time, we were trying to do good Christian duty of taking in the homeless and caring for the poor. And here we had this opportunity to house this youth, which at the time, he told us he was 16 years old. So we thought we were doing real good. Afterward, we learned that he was already 19, so he was legally an adult when he was with us. But so we took him in. As he stayed with us, he started telling stories about his father wanting to murder him, and his father was around the corner and stalking, and this created a sense of paranoia, especially with my ex-wife. And I had 2 small children at the time, and it became...
His father was around the corner while he was staying with you?
Around the corner, the next town over, hacking our internet, just so many things. And what that did was it created a paranoia, so that even when a pizza delivery guy knocked on their door, they dared not open the door, and they assumed that it was him. And it was an environment that was just very fearful. And
yeah,
so then
it would have been.
And we had no reason not to believe him. My wife and I were in our early 20s, just freshly married, young family, living on our own, renting a home. And we're just not prepared to have something like this happen. So we took his everything at his word. So
your first instinct would be to do that.
So when we were convinced that our address was compromised, then they took Solomon. Oh, we knew him as Solomon at the time. His name was Solomon Ostone. That's what we called him. That's what he called himself. They took him to my in-laws, and he stayed there for about a week. And then the same thing happened. More stories. And then they were under the impression that he was not safe here in Oregon. My family was no longer safe in Oregon. We thought that we had gotten ourselves tied up into this mess, this chaotic mess, and that our lives were in danger. So we decided to take him to Washington, where he would be safer away from his father, because his father was in Oregon.
And in Oregon, what part of Oregon were you in at the time? Where was that?
This is southern Oregon, Grants Pass.
Okay. Yeah, I've been to Grants Pass a couple times. Actually tried to get a hyperbaric service started there. Okay. Now, that's a good little hike from Grants Pass to Quinn Rose's place.
Yeah, so that's where the story of the white van comes in. Indeed, they did go to Washington in a white van, but by no means was it against his will. It was all pre-planned and agreed upon.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, now in your interview with David, you said there was some paperwork that you got from him. Do you happen to remember what that paperwork was?
Yeah, it was a printed agreement. When we picked him up from his mother, kind of like releasing, acknowledging that he is staying with us. And yeah, it was just very basic permission slip, if you will.
Oh, okay. 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 You wouldn't happen to have that or a picture of it, would you?
I do have documents, sure, but I'm very careful who I share them with.
Gee, I can't imagine why. Oh, there's knives out there in the tall grass.
Yeah, I've been in communication here with local law enforcement, and they, so they're aware of the case. And
okay,
if he were to ever come back and harass me, stalk me, come at my doorstep again, then I can file a stalking report.
Well, or you could call. Yeah, I'm basically David's stepdad, so I have some influence.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how much that is, but so what do you know about what happened to David in Oregon City?
Anything aside from the 2 weeks that I spent with him, everything else is just speculation or things that I've heard. But before we picked him up in Oregon City, my wife and him were in communication via Facebook for several months. That's when she
in communication with David.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they would talk about Brian Davis and fantasy, and they were basically like nerds, teenagers that basically just talking nerdy stuff, books.
Were they talking about Brian Davis like they were talking to Brian Davis, or just like he was some sort of picture on the wall?
They were talking like fans would about his stories, his writing, meeting him in conventions, book signings. That's actually how they started communication. They both commented on the same post, and whatever was said made an impression, and they started chatting via Facebook Messenger, and they added each other as friends, and they chatted it up with a common mutual interest.
You know who Sarah Rose is?
Quinn's mother.
Quinn's mom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody up there is running around with David's social security number.
Whose?
David's.
Oh, first I've heard of it.
Oh, okay. Other interesting name to me, Emily Hancock. Have any idea who that is?
Another Facebook friend, that talking again about Brian Davis. So my ex, David Sullivan, and Emily would have like group chats together, and they would talk about Brian and nerdy stuff. I've never met her in person, so it's just an online interaction.
Did you ever have any unfriendly interactions with David's mom?
Initially, no. But after we dropped him off, there have been several times where she would show up here in my home. After we dropped him off and hoping to write this thing off and archive it in our past, I took my family and I moved. I moved locations. So
when you say dropped him off where?
When he was dropped off at the bus station, everyone involved was hoping to put this aside in our past and just forget about it. We thought it was all done and over with. Then imagine my surprise that years later, after I moved my family to a new home, he shows up on my front doorstep. So I don't know how, but he managed to get my new address. Him and his mother. And they weren't antagonistic. They would try to tell this story of him. He's wearing a neck brace. He got hit by a car on more than one occasion. Memory loss. I can only assume they were trying to pull up my heartstrings to garner sympathy, support. I don't know what they wanted. But I kept my distance. But then again, one time, just randomly driving in town from the library to a restaurant, this car was following me, and I pull up to the parking lot of the restaurant, and then they pull up right next to us and get out and they greet us. So that legitimately scared me because I felt like I was being watched, I was being stopped. And again, wanting answers to questions. What happened when he stayed with us? What happened in Washington when he... And I simply didn't believe it. I didn't believe that he had amnesia. I didn't believe that he was hit by these cars because I had, at this point, learned to distrust him. And anything he had to say was suspect. And so I just had brief conversations with him from time to time. But what really bothered me was just the fact that me trying to put it away and forget about it, he keeps showing up. And then it all accumulates to 2016. I have cops show up on my front door because apparently he and his mother called the local police station and accused me of being an ISIS recruiter and having a training camp in my home and many other absurd allegations. And the police, they came and they did their investigation, and it was discarded as completely false. But the fact that he even went so far as to make this false accusation against me just, made me frustrated, made me upset, and made me scared. I don't know what's he going to do in the future. Well, lo and behold, he goes on in an interview and he doxes me and my family. He lists the names of my children and he puts on Google Map my address. So now, I'm scared. Me and my family are scared. We don't know who's going to show up with a sense of vengeance or vigilantism, because now they believe that I'm some sort of terrible person, and on his behalf, they might vandalize my home or they might take some sort of personal justice. I'm just trying to live in peace with my family.
Yeah. Well, that's what he's trying to do right now, and somebody's doing the same to him.
I don't know where he lives. I don't have any information to dox him with. No. The only time I ever appeared on camera was to defend myself. I'm not out there accusing him. I'm not out there harassing him. I'm not calling him. There's no record of me initiating anything. The only time I've ever been on YouTube was in response to him. It was a reaction.
Well, very strange here. Well, he was hit. I've seen the medical reports. His car got deliberately hit in Medford a few times. And he really got clocked on one of them. He was in a coma for weeks. I don't know where that fits time-wise in between when he went with you to Glen Rose's place or sometime later.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was in 2012, I think. And his mom didn't leave the area out there until somewhere first quarter 2015.
Yeah, whether he was hit or not is really not the point as far as I'm concerned. throwing that out there. I can't prove it. His stories. I don't have evidence to prove what he says is true or not. So everything, I just want to keep my distance. Healthy, set healthy boundaries.
All right.
I never hear from him again. That's all I want. Me and my family to never hear his name ever again.
Based on your experience with him, you think he's a dangerous person?
Based on my experience, I have no reason to believe that he himself is dangerous now. He was malnutritioned, very weak. So physically, he wasn't a very threatening presence. Now I believe the real threat just comes from what he has to say. Comes from accusations, comes from garnering support, using victimhood status in order to gain sympathy, in order to gain monetary support, donations, going from house to house, get charity from whoever believes his tales. How much is true, I don't know, but that's where I believe his danger is just simply taking advantage of people.
Okay. Question, going back, the document you said you got from him was a permission slip from his mom, allowing David to go with you.
Yeah.
Do you have any other documents that would have been related to David or his mom?
Oh, yeah. I have many, but I'm reserving them for use in the court of law. If and when it comes to it.
Well, if I may, any idea, can you tell me what those documents are?
I have police reports. I have transcripts of messages, like I mentioned on Facebook. I have records of those back and forth before the incident, during the incident, even after the incident. I have voice recordings of the phone calls that he left to me, voicemails that he's left to me. And
when you say the incident, what are you referring to?
The time where he stayed with me in Grant's house. Okay. So as far as I'm concerned, that's my interaction with him. That is ground zero.
Okay. But nothing like an ID card or anything like that?
I do, no. No, just everything that was related to his time with me.
Okay. But no legal documents like a Social Security card or anything like that?
No. No, the only legal documents I have, like I mentioned, are copies of police reports.
Okay. But you do have the letter from his mom, knowing her probably handwritten. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It wasn't notarized or anything, but yeah.
Yeah. Any of David's writing work?
No. If we did, I probably would have thrown it away a long time ago. But no, at this time, I don't have anything that personally belonged to him now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well. All right. That's right. I have a copy of handwritten letter his mom wrote to somebody. I don't know, you or Shiloh or whatever, revoking that permission. But that's the only document I have that I know of.
Can I ask when was it dated?
I'd have to dig it up and look. That'd take me a while.
Okay.
Apparently, yeah.
I'm not surprised. He and his mother were upset when he was taken back.
Well, yeah, because his mom, I'm told, had filed a missing persons report for just about every day he'd been gone. So there are some heavy-duty miscommunications there somewhere.
Well, I do have transcripts of communication with his mom during the period he was with us. So we can prove that during that time period, there was agreement. There was,
okay.
She knew that he was, and she knew that he was taken to Washington. Yeah, they were in constant communication via phone almost every day.
But you have no knowledge of him ever on that trip getting to Canada?
Oh, no, that no one would have had the time. Everyone's working. No one had vacation time to go up and go to Canada. That's quite the trip.
Yeah, that's 4 hours past Queen Rose's place.
Yeah, we were all working. We all have small kids at home. Can't get going to Canada. Maybe at one point, I mean, this is speculation on my part, maybe at one point, if they felt that their Washington address was compromised, maybe the next safe house would have been somewhere in Canada. But that's all that I can. Maybe that was tossed around in local communication. But as far as any evidence of crossing the border, there is none.
When you say safe house, what do you mean?
My ex-wife, her family is in Canada, so I'm sure she's from Canada. So just from visiting a relative, somebody.
Okay.
You know, with under the impression of keeping his father off the trail. And to this day, I've never met the father. I've never had any physical evidence that his father was even in the area. Any indication of his father, as far as my experience goes, has been nothing but just talk. Okay.
The dad is very real. I haven't met him, but I've heard enough about it. So I saw myself. He's quite real.
Based on his stories, me and my family would have been chopped up to pieces a long time ago. He would have come breaking down my door a long time ago. He would have ex-military. He would have had the resources to tag all my phones, my communication, and wiretap everything. Based on the stories, they didn't line up with what I experienced. And what I experienced was nothing. Nothing happened.
Well, I have some experience with the people that David's dad is associated with. They can be a bad bunch, but I've made this weighing myself. They're not about to just go out and willy-nilly harming people or do anything that can be readily traced back to whoever did it. That's not their style. So, in terms of overt danger to somebody like yourself, I don't really think there is any. But
I'm certainly not looking for it.
No, I'm not looking for it either. But, the dad is real. I'm not sure where he is these days. I've heard he lives in Medford, but I've been to Medford, but only once, and not for not very long. Any idea why Shiloh would have called David Cody?
For the same reason that I mentioned the other two names, they were just possible identities that we thought that could have been him.
Now, one puzzlement here. Did you have, David goes with you guys for a couple of weeks. How much communication and knowledge of David and his mom prior to that did you guys actually have? Seems odd that she would let David go off with somebody she didn't know very well.
We didn't know about the father. Those were stories that he told to us after he was with us. We knew a lot about his mother as far as her health condition goes. I admit we didn't do our due diligence, and we were very green. Like I mentioned, we were young, very young, very impressionable.
I've been young and gullible too.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be just a short-term thing, and we were just looking to hang out. Because they essentially became good friends. So, we were doing the mother a favor, but in another way too, we were also just looking forward to bonding and growing our friendship.
Okay. So Shiloh and David has become friends?
Oh, very much so. Prior to the meeting, So in that regard, he wasn't just a stranger. They had already built rapport through the months of chatting back and forth on Facebook.
Uh-huh.
And he was an aspiring writer. My wife was also an aspiring writer. So they had a lot of things in common.
Mm-hmm. But had they met in person other than just Facebook?
Not until we picked them up, no.
Okay. That still leaves me curious as to how Cody got in that conversation.
The name Cody?
Yeah.
I don't know the origin of it. It's not anyone that I know personally.
Okay. I know Cody to be real. I've met him. But a bit of a elusive character, but very real. And he's definitely not David. He looks like him, but I know how to tell them apart. You have to know what to look for.
Sure.
It's like identical twins, just about. Except one has got bad teeth and one has good teeth. That sort of stuff. Say, okay, smile. They basically have the same biological father. So it's not surprising that they look the same. But to tell them apart, you got to look at the teeth. You got to look at, Cody's got some tattoos that David doesn't have. But he's not around waving those out on a flagpole.
Understood.
All right.
Yeah, when David stayed with us, we never called him Cody to his face.
Uh-huh.
No, we referred to him as, at the time, like I said, Solomon Osteen. We called him Solomon. The Cody thing was just a passing. Like I said, it was just a suspicion. It wasn't really a big deal. At the time, it was no big deal.
Okay. I have heard reports that Quinn Rose had some cages in his basement and kids locked in them. Any knowledge of that?
Yeah, I stayed in his basement. He's got a couple bedrooms, but they're extra guest bedrooms. No children, locked in cages. He's got a couple of dogs. Dog hair everywhere. A lot of danger. My allergies kick up every time I visit.
Okay. Now, at some point, I think one of those interviews, you said David locked your kids in the basement. Any truth in that? Or Quinn?
I don't have a basement. Yes, that's what he said. I concur. David's interview, he did accuse me of having children locked away in my basement. That is completely false. My home has no basement, and the only children are my biological children living with me, and they're not in cages. Like I mentioned, I had the police come. They physically entered my home. They concluded that those accusations were not false.
The statement that accused David of locking your kids in a cage in the basement, apparently that came from Quinn Rose. I don't know why it would, but apparently it did.
Well, that's I cannot verify that. I know Quinn personally, and would not claim that. So.
Yeah. Okay. Now somebody's stalking David these days. We've been thinking, cyber stalking, putting their information out, in this family's information out on social media. We've been thinking that was Brian Davis, but might be somebody just posing as Brian Davis. You know anything about anybody trying to stalk David and his family?
No. Everyone that I know who has ever encountered David would do the exact opposite. Would try to evade him, keep him away, and to not interact with him, and just move on from him whatsoever. The idea of purposely going on the attack, antagonizing David, stalking him, putting his information out there, that doesn't make sense to me. It's only going to invite further trauma and further conflict. And everyone that I know who has ever met David, that's the last thing we want. We want to live in peace and be left alone, including Brian Davis as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just trying to think if there's anything else I can realistically ask you to help me sort out what's going on here. But do you know any other people that are feeling like they're victims of David?
Personally, no.
Yeah. Okay. So to you, David was basically a young man in need, trying to find some way to make his way through life. Yeah, the mom was sick at the time.
Yeah, and it was hard on our family because, like I mentioned, he and my ex-wife had developed a friendship. And so she took it hard. It was hard because it was like a personal betrayal. And we were all hopeful that we would have long-lasting friendships. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy coming to those conclusions and letting go.
And betrayal is something I've had some experience with. You say Charlotte felt betrayed, and tell me in what way?
Well, all it took was for one outlandish thing that he said to be irrevocably disproven with evidence, which we were able to do while he stayed with us. And then when that happened, that light bulb moment in her head, thinking, what else has he said that could also not be true? And so what that did is just shattered any sense of trust, the foundation, which is necessary for a foundation for a friendship. So we're not saying that absolutely everything he said was false, but everything therefore became suspect. And based on the intensity of his stories and his accusations, it was something that we couldn't afford to take. We couldn't, for the safety of everyone, we couldn't afford to trust him, because if we were wrong, the consequences of being wrong in this regard were too high. Which is why everyone thought the safest route to take would be to just cut him off. If indeed his life was, if he was on the run, if he needed safety and shelter from danger, we were not the ones to provide that for him. And we encouraged them to seek professional law enforcement, different avenues, official avenues, not just a bunch of strangers with a welcoming hug.
That one thing that kind of broke the bubble, you happen to remember what that was?
There was one moment where in Quinn Rose's basement, Shiloh and Solomon and David were there. And Shiloh was reading a book, and David came in and he turned off the light. And Shiloh asked him to turn it back on, and he refused. And she thought that he was just jesting, so she again, asked him politely to turn it back on. And after several times of him refusing and responding in a serious tone, she felt legitimately frightened, and for the first time around him, because his refusal to turn the light on, and that was the turning point where she became scared of being with him, around him, alone with him. Nothing came out of it. Eventually the light was turned on and they continued on, but that was something she couldn't shake off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. He used to ghostwrite TV shows. Did he talk to you about any of that?
I do recall that was something he said, yes.
Okay. And Shiloh didn't get frightened enough to call the police or anything like that.
No, and she regrets not doing so. She admits that at that time she was weak and feeble, scared, and she wanted to trust him. And the idea of calling the cops on him at that time.
That's not something somebody with a big heart would do.
Right. Despite the mistrust, the hurt feelings, the rejection during his time with us and afterwards, we were Shiloh and I, ready to just move on and just and even afterwards we were in communication with him via email, where he forgave us, we forgave him, we tried to make amends, we tried to clean the slate, and then just wish each other all the best. And that would have been a happy ending if that were the case. But when, like I mentioned, when he was stalking us and then called the cops on us, that's when he took it too far. And it wasn't up until that point then we didn't really take him seriously as a serious threat before then, but he forced our hands afterwards. And so,
you say he called the cops on you guys for what?
Like I mentioned before, he accused me of being an ISIS recruiter and having a training camp in my home.
Okay.
And I have the police report of that. He went to the police station in person with his mother, and they made the accusation there. The police showed up that same day. So I have all that documented. But yeah, that's when we took it personally. Like, now they are attacking us, when prior to that we had wiped the slate clean. I have a voicemail message and a conversation with him prior to that event where we talked and we forgave each other. We reminisced about our time together. We said our sorries, him and I, and we wished each other the best of luck. So we had buried the hatchet. And then a month later is when the police showed up. So, very confusing. What he says, what his words are, and in his actions, they didn't line up.
Okay. Well, I'm just, as I said, I'm just trying to piece together in my own mind what really happened. So, all right.
All right. Well, I wish you the best of luck in your investigation.
Yeah. Did you? Yeah. I guess one or two last questions. You know, did he ever get arrested with Shiloh in Oregon City?
The only time that we ever went to Oregon City was to pick him up. After that, we were never in Oregon City with him ever again. Like I mentioned, the bus station, he went home to Oregon City via bus. So Shiloh, Quinn, or Sarah Rose, or anybody, nobody spent any time with him in Oregon City, other than Shiloh and I when we went to pick him up.
There's a report in my notes that he was arrested in Oregon City at a downtown Target. Quinn called the police in to arrest him.
And that wouldn't make any sense because when he was staying with Quinn, it was in Washington, not Oregon.
Was this on the way up, or now I am really totally confused. But did Shiloh ever get arrested with being with David anywhere?
No, Shiloh's never been arrested. I can't imagine why they'd make a stop to Oregon City as a detour. From Grants Pass to Washington, you go up the I-5. That goes through Portland. Oregon City is a good hour east of Portland. And if they weren't Oregon City, they probably would have just taken him directly back to his mother.
Well, at that point, what city was his mom living in?
Well, I imagine that unless she moved 2 weeks when we saw her in Oregon City, he stayed with us for 2 weeks, and then they went up to Washington. So I assume she'd still be in Oregon City.
Okay. Well, you said in your interview David was arrested at some Target store?
Right. Probably in Washington. What store? I don't know. I wasn't there. I have a document that Shiloh wrote up detailing the events. I don't have it pulled up right in front of me, so I can't confirm if it was Target or not. But
okay.
Yeah,
but apparently it was in Oregon City. Yeah. It sounds like something that would have happened on the way back. David, when he came back, did get arrested by the but nothing happened on the way up?
I wasn't there. Again, off the top of my head, I can't tell you. If anything.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I do recall there being an incident. Jeremiah, I think that's what Sarah Rose thought that he was Jeremiah. The when and where of when that happened, I'm not sure. But when he spent 2 weeks with me in Grants Pass, 2 weeks in Washington, so it was the second half of that trip, and I wasn't present during that part.
Well, question, his mom's living in Oregon City when this starts. He comes, spends 2 weeks with you in Grants Pass, and then you guys go up to Quinn Rose's place in Des Moines?
Yep.
Good little hike from Oregon City to Grants Pass. And then when David came back, he went directly to Oregon City?
From Des Moines, yeah.
From Des Moines?
He didn't come back down to Grants Pass.
All right. Then how did he get from his mom's place to your house in Grants Pass?
Charlotte and I, we picked him up. We drove up, stayed the night at a motel. The next morning we picked him up, drove home.
Okay. So you stayed at your place in Grants Pass for 2 weeks until things got tense, and then you drove up to Des Moines. Did you leave him with Quinn Rose, or what happened?
Again, I wasn't there, so who was present in the home? It would have been a combination of people. Quinn Rose, his wife, Shiloh, his mother.
Okay.
Back and forth, babysitting, making sure that there was people present at home. Everyone's still working at the time, so making sure that he was never left alone.
Yeah. And from Quinn Rose's place, he goes to the local bus station?
Yeah.
Or Quinn takes him there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I'm understanding a little bit more. I don't think there's anything else I can think to ask you.
All right. I don't think I'll ever know the full truth.
Well,
I'm okay with it.
Someday I do, but I may not live that long. At this point, David and his wife just want to be left alone. I want them to be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to help them.
The feeling is mutual.
I need them to be successful with their writing. And there's somebody out there who's trying to throw sand in that machinery by the truckload. So, and they have a son with him now too. So, David has a family for the first time in his life that's his, and he's a different person. You might like him. But I like what happened to him. Once he's become a husband and a father.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to figure out how to turn off the harassment. We thought we knew where it was coming from, but maybe we don't.
Uh-huh. Well, if you have any advice for me, I'm open ears too.
Well, I guess my advice is don't believe everything you read or hear, because it's on this affair, probably 80% of it wrong.
Yeah,
the question is, which is the 20% that's not wrong.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I keep my social media presence strictly business only. I'm not really on there personally sharing stuff, sharing photos.
Social media with an agenda. Social media is great and wonderful for keeping up with your friends, but it also gives everybody with a particular cause, whether it's right, wrong, or nuts, a platform to put their views out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are kind of harmful.
You get the good with the bad.
Yep. All right, sure, appreciate it.
You said your name was Stephen?
Yeah.
Okay, it was nice to meet you.
Likewise. I think Brian Davis mentioned me when you were in that interview with him, a TikTok interview. He talked about Stephen Reimers a couple times. I'm the Stephen Reimers he was talking about.
Okay. I wish you the best of luck. And despite everything that's happened, look, I don't wish any harm to happen to David or anyone around him. Just want everyone to live.
All right. All right. Well, that's what they want to do. So we're all on the same page there.
I agree.
All right, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Take care.